You know, Friday's dismal jobs report made it pretty clear there won't be any dramatic change in the economy before the midterm elections next month. And both parties seem pretty committed to their talking points between now and the voting. But our next guest, Robert Reich, argues that the roots of our current economic crisis are deep, the ramifications could play out for decades, and he offers solutions that many will call radical. It's all in a new book called Aftershock, The Next Economy and America's Future. It's great to see you again.
Good to see you, George.
Bob. And, you know, we've been dealing with this crisis for at least 2 years now, going back to 2008. But you argue that its roots actually go back at least 30 years.
Yes. In fact, 30 years ago, the typical male worker in this country was earning just about what the typical male worker is earning today, if you consider inflation.
Flat.
Absolutely flat. And, you know, typical families, beginning in the 70s and 80s, mothers, women went into paid work, and then everybody worked longer hours in the 90s. And then the early part of this decade, everybody went deeper and deeper into debt. But obviously that debt bubble burst, and there's a limit to how much families can do.
So what do families do right now, those who are lucky enough to be working? You keep hearing that, boy, we got to get our savings rate back up, but if you save too much and people don't spend and the economy doesn't continue to grow, what do you say to the average family now just struggling to get by?
Well, I say to the average family that what you need to do is not necessarily rational for the economy as a whole, but what you need to do is to save. You need to cut back on your purchases. You need to economize, because this economy, unfortunately, is not coming back anytime soon. And
you argue that if we don't address these deep problems, we could face a future we almost can't imagine right now. I love the game you play. You talk about the 2020 election. You ask us to imagine the 2020 election. You have Chelsea Clinton running against George P. Bush. I mean, there's a little facetious there, but you say the real candidate, if we don't get a handle on this, would be Margaret Jones, the candidate of the Independence Party, which would be isolationist, anti-trade, anti-immigration, and would likely cause a collapse of the economy.
Yeah, George, what I argue in the book, and the argument is really to people who are very well off today, is that you will be better off if you have a smaller share of a rapidly growing economy that produces a positive politics than if you have, as you do now, a large share of an economy that is really anemic and that is producing a very negative, angry politics.
But your solutions go right into the teeth of the Tea Party. You call for what, a 55% income tax rate on the top 1%. You say Medicare for everyone. I can hear the commercials right now. You also want a carbon tax. I mean, they'll say this is exactly the problem with what's happening now. More government, more tax.
No, actually, I come out in favor of lower taxes for the vast majority of people, and in fact, wage subsidies for most Americans, and free higher public education, and a lot of things that we can, as a country, do. The problem is that we are so skewed in terms of wealth and income and power right now in favor of people at the top that we can't do it. And George, when I say these things, you know, a lot of people accuse me of being a class warrior, but really, I'm a class warrior, W-O-R-R-I-E-R. Just worry. This is historic. I mean, we haven't had this degree of concentrated income and wealth in this country since 1928. And you know what happened in 1929. I mean, the Great Depression was directly the result of the middle class not having enough purchasing power to keep the economy going. We're back there again, I'm afraid.
I also love how you ask people to take responsibility for themselves, and this fascinating idea of more cooperatives.
Well, I think that in terms of what people can do themselves, people can form cooperatives. They can work with other people. They don't have to necessarily wait until they get the job or the old job back. I make a very important point for people, that they shouldn't take it personally. I meet all over the country people who have lost their jobs, and they say, what did I do wrong? And I say to them, you did nothing wrong. This is an economic system that is working, unfortunately, in a way right now that is not helping you and your family. Don't take it personally.
But what they most worry about, their class worries as well, is that their children will not have any of the opportunities that they did or their parents did.
Yes, and that's why we as a nation have to invest in infrastructure and education like we did in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, George. There's no way we can grow as an economy if we don't not only invest in people, but also make sure that the middle class is getting an adequate share of the total gains of economic growth.
Okay, Robert Reich, thanks very much. The book is called Aftershock. You can read an excerpt at abcnews.com/GMA.